we're going to talk about secrecy and hiding stuff. So official. Hiding stuff. How the government hid stuff. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. As a broker and investor myself, I like to keep track of what's going on in the market. Well, we got the stats now from TREB for August of 2021. We're going to talk about that, break it down for you, and then get into what comes next in the following months. But also we're going to talk supply. We're going to talk politics. We're going to talk about suppressed studies by the RCMP that should have been paid attention to 25 years ago. Lots of fun stuff for you today on our show. If you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe. And if you're getting value out of our channel and maybe you learned some stuff today, hit that share button on Instagram and you can tag me at Watson Estates. Send you guys some heart and some love. I really appreciate all the support. It helps grow the channel. And if you're getting value, I think today is day and age, a lot of confusion. Hopefully we can summarize that and explain that to people like you, investors like you online. So let's get into, before we start talking about what happened in August and kind of some of the things I'm watching for, we're going to talk about what happened the last few months. We've been tracking it closely, but for those of you who are maybe just need to be brought up to speed, we had a very early spring. And so the last several months, 3 to 4 months to be exact, we've been experiencing a lot of declines in some of our numbers, namely sales activity. And there's been a big question on, is the market ever going to come back? And the impression in the market from what I see, apart from ourselves, is no. Right? Things are starting to deteriorate. Things are falling apart at the seams. There's opportunities if you simply wait. And there's a lot of holding patterns that are out there. Well, we were very much waiting for this month, the month of August, but specifically, I'm actually most excited about September. But I think we're starting to get some leading indicators through August of what our September will look like, which is why I think having a true picture of the past is the best opportunity as an investor to get ahead in the future. And so where do we stand? Where do we stand today? The question for me was, when is the fall? Is it going to be a typical fall months for real estate, which would land somewhere in September? Or would it come a little bit earlier, putting us closer into August? Well, it actually might have come slightly early, but I think it's actually right on time because I don't think the news has really broke on what's ahead of us, which obviously creates an opportunity for you as an investor. But rounding into the fall market, the real estate game is changing very, very quickly. So is the entire economy, right? We've got vaccine passports on their way, and it's fun and games until you want to see a listed property, but without a vaccine, no entry per the seller. A big debate happening right now at the Toronto Real Estate Board is people should have the right to sell their property as they choose. If you vote liberal with this blind bidding war, you are restricting their ability to do that. Well, how does that apply for vaccines? The question is still yet to be determined. Yet to be answered, at least as far as I'm concerned. If you guys know, put it down in the chat below or send us a DM, send us a message, because I'm curious on how that's going to play out. Because if I have a seller that's not so interested in having those pesky unvaccinated folks through my property, do I have a right to restrict their access? Who knows? Who knows? But if you want in the open house, no problem. No problem. Show your passport to the listing agent. He'll crack a funny joke about your picture. I mean, you have to hand it to him. We like to have some fun at the show. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. We had a long weekend. We're in the middle of a long weekend as I'm recording this. Tomorrow's Labor Day. We celebrate all the pregnancies in our, thank you, Mama. Appreciate it. Appreciate all that you do. Because who wants to celebrate unions? Go NDP. We're going to talk about them in a bit. But let's go. Jumping all over the place. Got apparently ADHDs. That was a blow on that joke. But I say, hey, good news. I don't know what HD is, but I got 80 of them. That's the joke. Anyways. NowToronto.com article we're going to lead with today, trying to dissect what is going on in our market. What in the world? Let's talk about price. Start with price. Detached homes averaged 1.67 million selling price in August, which is up 3% from July and 11.2% from last year, but down from some of the peak levels that we saw earlier this year. And if I had to claim what the peak months were, actually, I think we might have hit the peak in May. But from what I was seeing as far as activity, it was really early, February, March, even January, we were seeing some crazy activity. So the selling price in August for a home in the city of Toronto was $1 million in August, which is the lowest it's been since February. There you go. They're calling February the high, the peak of the price in Toronto. Well, why? Why are we seeing prices come down? Is it because home prices are dropping? Not quite. the main reason is actually condo apartments made up the bulk of the sales this past month. Apparently, people care for affordability, and the condos are playing catch up because they've been struggling the last several months, finally outpacing inflation at a growth speed. But it's attributing to the cooler selling price. But the big story, actually the big story before the big story, we're going to hit that massive red flag that I'm watching in a second. But the big story, I think, that's coming out of the news is sales. Sales. Condo apartment sales in Toronto were up 13% in August year over year. Hence why we had a disproportionate number of condos selling. But as a whole, overall, they were actually down in August as buyers and sellers, they say, tried to enjoy the last few days of summer. Real estate sales across the GTA were down. Sales were down almost 20%, 19.9% from this time last year. So when you're comparing year over year, you would think fall market to fall market, we're having these prices come or number of sales dropping. This is a cause for concern, is it not? Well, here is the red flag. Here is the thing, that number 43. Today, I want you guys to remember the number 43. Yeah, we had a 20% drop in sales, but the number to note today as you're talking to your friends about what the market is doing is 43. That is the number of new listings dipping by 43%. Yes, we have sales activity coming down, but we absolutely have new listings dropping very, very fast. People don't want to sell anymore. Why is that? Who knows? Who knows? But the key measure, and I don't have the numbers here, but the key thing you want to watch for is the changing sales to new listings ratio. If you've got sales, even if they're dropping slower than the number of new listings, naturally we have a declining months of inventory, which has been semi-stable in the last few months. Is this the start of some serious change we're going to experience in September, a tightening, a squeezing of supply? Listen to this. This is actually coming from a BlogTO article, but here's what they say. Home prices continue to rise in Toronto across every sector of the market as demand mounts, supply levels dwindle, and new listings drop by a whopping 43% to reach their lowest in 10 years. So all of this fun that we've experienced, including 2017, all of this ups and the downs and the tightness of supply is unmatched compared to this month. Yet it seems like things are slowing down if you were just to read the headlines. No. Wow. Ahead of us, guys, buckle your seatbelt. I believe that slingshot philosophy that we had is absolutely accurate. And I think you're going to see it begin, maybe just blow off the roof in September. And in the 905, for people who maybe aren't in the 416, prices for detached in the 905 region saw the highest spike in prices on a yearly basis, up 25.6%. Wow. So if you put a 20% down on a property a year ago, you in the single year have made well over 100% return. Beautiful thing, kind of, assuming you own assets. But that's between August 2021 and August 22. And that reaches a new average price in the 905 of $1.366 million. The sales are down. Argument. So that question, sales are down. Well, sales figures were down for the fourth month in a row. Treb actually reported the third highest sales record highest results on record for August. So though we have sales coming down, we are seeing the highest for the month of August than we've experienced, the third highest August ever. So we got a decline, sales are going down, but even though they're going down compared to what? They're coming down compared to excessively high number of sales, and therefore are they really down if it's the third highest in history? Not so much. So again, this pitch on sales are down, the market is cooling, things are slowing down, I think is a very weak argument when you put it all into these perspectives. Well, what is Treb's perspective? And the fun thing is I actually have an appointment booked with the president, Kevin Krieger, to come on our show. That'll be next month, hopefully to review the stats from September, which, if what I'm saying is accurate, it's going to be an amazing month to talk about, not to mention it will be the end of the third quarter. So we're really excited to have him come on. But here's what he says, speaking within this BlogTO article. The fact that new listings were at the lowest level for the past decade is alarming. It is clear that the supply of homes is not keeping pace with demand, and this situation will become worse once immigration into Canada resumes. All of this with the backdrop that immigration is down. It is down. Not only is it down, the plan, according to the Liberals, which I assume will continue, and I haven't heard much debate on at the federal election stage, maybe that's to happen still, is immigration is a good thing. Immigration drives demand, it builds our economy, and it's necessary to pull us out of this hole that we're in. Well, we'll see, because when you add that to what we're already experiencing, things are about to get a hell of a lot more fun. And as we move forward toward 2022, they say expect market conditions to become tighter. Tighter? Can we squeeze any more as population growth in the GTA starts to trend back to pre-COVID levels? We're going to go back. It's going to be tight like it is now, but actually worse, because the demand factors that existed pre-COVID are on their way back. But what should we be most worried about right now? I think there's a number of things we should be concerned about. One of the big things that pop out to me right now is this is the first time I'm hearing at the federal level, or at the government level at all in general, that they're wanting to cool the housing market. There's this conversation of let's settle things down. It reminds me of 2016, 2017. That was a conversation that happened that led us to actually sell one of our properties in nick of time before the market collapsed and took years to recover from there. This is the first kind of sense that I'm getting that there's this need to cool the market that's happening from the political stage. But I think one of the big things that I'm noticing is this idea of immigration, but also foreign capital. Not the same thing. Immigration, obviously, meaning they're moving here. Foreign capital, meaning they're investing here. But these are things that the political parties are trying to tackle when they're talking about their strategy and their platforms for the upcoming election. So one of the articles that stuck out to me, we're going to talk about secrecy and hiding stuff. So official, hiding stuff, how the government hid stuff. Well, the article is actually a Bell Dwelling article, and I've seen other articles about this too, but everything is kind of targeting the investor. This is where I want to go from here as well. We're targeting the foreign buyer. We're targeting the investor. Very much a strategy that's being applied across all party platforms. So here's the article. It's called Canada Hid a Foreign Capital and Housing Study While Dismissing Intelligence Warnings. Here's what it says. Canadian tax authorities confirmed they knew about illicit foreign capital inflating real estate. They say there are two reports that were suppressed, one from 1996, the next from the following year, 1997. And here's the high level. In 1996, the Canadian Revenue Agency studied millionaire migrants and ownership. The tax authority was looking into reports of mansion buying with poverty level incomes, not one or two either. It was a systematic issue. So this is from 1996. Not long if you're old, but a long time. A long time. What is that? 25 years. 25 years in the making. We're just getting word that this actually happened. But 25 years ago, they talked about, well, people are coming to the country. They're poor. They're hitting the level of poverty, and yet they're buying mansions. The volume of wealthy new immigrants declaring refugee amounts of income was impressive. Young's analysis showed these buyers scooped 90% of high volume homes in the greater Vancouver suburbs of Burnaby. So obviously a big issue in Vancouver, but something we should be paying attention to across Canada as well. And long-term residents made similar purchases made 16 times their income. They're buying up 90% of these homes in some of these areas, and their income is non-existent. That was one report. The other report, a joint task force between the RCMP and CSIS, was created in 1997 to assess China's influence on Canada. The result was a, quote, top secret report called Sidewinder, Chinese Intelligence Services and Triad's Financial Links. Here's what they did. There were many allegations. One of the big one was that criminals were exploiting the immigration system. Hiding amongst legitimate immigrants, organized crime infiltrated the system channels to do business. One goal of theirs that they were accused of was buying real estate to control local politicians. If I am a resident or if I own real estate, I now have a vote. I can have an influence in that market. So some serious stuff. I mean, this seems like a Hollywood movie of the type of investing that's going on. And yet we just are being told that these studies were actually happening. And in many ways, the argument from this article is that it's been suppressed. It's been suppressed. We should have been having this conversation through all of these housing price increase markets we've experienced. This conversation should have been ongoing, but it has not. It has not. It's been suppressed. It's been ignored to the point where immigration numbers are encouraged more than ever before. That is the leading force that's going to drive us, save us from the depths of COVID. But then we come out successful and it's still there. And so now it's up for conversation at the political level. I think people are smart to it now. They're starting to recognize this is a big issue. Money pouring into our country. They move here is one issue, but even if they don't move here, even more so. Well, I think as I'm looking at the platforms for the parties, it's commonly understood. If you move here, if you're going to buy a home, you're welcome. You're welcome to come here. No problem. Those numbers are high. Probably still some challenges there, but I think we generally, when we look at all political, kind of a neutral perspective, all accept someone wants to move to Canada. That is what makes Canada amazing, and that is what we are welcoming. Fine. But when it comes to foreign investment, foreign capital, which we've been talking about, this is an issue for a very, very long time, right? The financialization of the Canadian housing market. Well, all parties have these kind of different perspectives. If you missed it, go back to our last episode, the one before the last, of me talking about politics and the different platforms, but I'm going to add a little bit to it here. One of the things that we notice is this idea of restricting foreign capital, foreign investment. When we look at the Liberals and the Conservatives, both parties in this topic want to freeze buying foreign buyers from purchasing real estate that they don't move to, or some describe as they intend to move to, which is a bit of a loose term as well. Maybe there's some holes. Definitely some holes. Hopefully they get filled in. But the concept is, unless you're going to move here, we don't want you here. The NDP takes a different approach. They're saying, well, this foreign buyer tax that exists, that Trudeau's actually implementing, we're going to really blow this out of proportion. Instead of 1%, we're going to hit 20%. We're going to make it so impossible for them to do it that they simply won't. Or if they do, thank you for the money. Great way to generate wealth for all the money we're going to spend. We're going to need some kind of revenue. I don't know, but these are the different approaches the political parties have. And the other thing that's being spoken of right now is from the Liberal Party only, and definitely in conflict with the Toronto Real Estate Board wants to see, is a removal of blind bidding wars. Again, kind of overstepping the roles and responsibilities of the federal government and making it actually, under the criminal code, illegal for you to host a blind bidding war. Very much like we see in Australia. They believe in transparency down under. When we were traveling to Australia a few years ago, they asked me if I had a criminal record, which was weird. I didn't know you still needed one to go there, but apparently. But also, why not hit the investor? When we're talking about politics, we're talking about investment, foreign investment, local investment. I believe the local investor is a very powerful tool, at least it's been in the past. What we're starting to see is this kind of transition. I'm noticing. Don't have stats to back it up necessarily, other than the fact that there's a lot of small investors, and we're starting to see a transition with multinational corporations, massive condo development companies investing in single-family homes, seeing the opportunity and the protection that's in place for that real estate class, and they're really taking it over. Well, with all of this being considered, people from out of country and people from within country, why not punch the investor right where the sun don't shine? Well, that's exactly what they're doing. According to advisor.ca, I didn't get into, in our last episode, talking about politics, the NDP's platform too much on the corporate and tax side. Obviously, being a far left-wing party, or the furthest from the ones that we're talking about here today, they are very much about taxing the rich. And you've heard this kind of conversation taking place. Well, that's going to harm those of us who invest in real estate. The rich, or the wealthy, they describe as being someone who has over $10 million, someone who has an income over $210,000, which is, in my opinion, is not that much. It's really not that much, at least from where I'm sitting, speaking with investors across Canada, across the GTA. So I really thought, you know what, let's talk about that, because I think that's an important part of making your decision at the polls, is recognizing that a big part of the plan of the NDP is to tax the rich in order to pay for additional socialist style spending. Well, the NDP pledged to raise top marginal tax rate and capital gains inclusion rate. That blows me away, the inclusion thing, the capital gains thing. Here's what they say. Under the NDP, the top marginal tax rate, which applies to income over $216,000, so you make over $216,000 a year in income, it would raise from 35% from 33%. So a 2% increase, which would affect those making more than $210,000. But what's crazy too is that they want to increase the capital gains tax. So those of you who invest big, small, $10 million, making less than $200,000, doesn't matter. You invest in real estate, capital gains rate of 75%. That's a 50% increase from where it is currently. I would have liked to see it go, if anything, the other way as someone who invests. But the strategy here is we're going to penalize people who use real estate as a means of gaining income, not just real estate, stocks, dividends, bonds, all of these things. If you're gaining money outside of your TFSA, you're going to pay. And the party also brought back a campaign promise from 2019, which they call the wealth tax. How about that? That'll be fun too, right? Share that with your beneficiaries. A 1% wealth tax would apply to, quote, super rich multimillionaires with over 10 million in wealth. So if you got over $10 million in equity, in assets, in real estate or otherwise, we're going to hit you with a 1% tax. You got to pay your fair share. You got to pay your fair share. And this is the conversation that's taking place right now. So all of these things, we're going a little bit on a tangent, but I wanted to really point to what I think is going to be, as we round into the political game in the last month or so, as we talk about where we're headed in the fall, what I am seeing is that we're seeing extremely tight supply, a very, very, very tight market as far as what's available. And then we see a fight that's happening, not so much addressing supply and addressing this excessive demand, but instead targeting foreign investors, targeting investors in general. Now, can that cool the housing market? Yes. I mean, we saw that with the implementation of the stress test. It did just that. So, and why? Because in my opinion of psychology, I don't think it addressed it directly, but it was enough to spook people. And so maybe that's the scenario. Maybe we see if the liberals, let's say, get elected as a majority and they apply a blind bidding war restriction and they apply all of the things they're talking about. We're going to have a list of people who have bought real estate but haven't closed yet, maintain a list, which actually we didn't talk about in our last episode too, but really getting their teeth and their hands into the real estate market and keeping, just being, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if the Liberal Party would have put a primary residence exemption removal in their campaign if they hadn't been busted and yelled at by Trev in advance of the platform in the campaign. But if we have a serious shakeup take place at the political level, whether or not it's going to change real estate housing, it could still affect housing. But all things created equal, or all things laid out kind of equally, as far as supply and demand, as far as months of inventory, as far as where we stand in our market, we are experiencing, in some ways, the tightest real estate market that we've experienced ever. Definitely from a month over month, number of sales are extremely high, third highest. And we have months of inventory certainly going to come down if we've got the sales to new listing ratio with the trend. And we haven't even hit the fall. We're just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited next month to be able to speak with the president of TREB, get a little bit of perspective on what happens next. What happens next from the real estate board, from their perspective. One of the things that I realized when I look back at all the predictions that took place during COVID was we had massive ranges of prediction. I think TD was the most accurate. They expected I think it was 18% increase or something that people are just like, there's no way. But the party that seemed to be the most accurate, and don't shoot the messenger, was actually RE/MAX and the real estate boards. The realtors and the people in the industry, whether they have a direct benefit of increasing the market or not, their predictions seem to be the most accurate. So I think it's important that we recognize when they're saying this is extremely tight and it's only going to get tighter, that we have to at least listen to that. I think we have to listen to it. I know there's a lot of people that wouldn't agree, but take it how you will, guys. It's your money. It is your money, but it's also your time. And I appreciate the time that you took to listen to our show today. If you could, please hit that like button, please subscribe, and tag us at Watson Estates as you share this podcast with your friends, family, and co-investors. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care and keep it real.